I want to tell you, buy real estate to protect the roof over your head, because you have to look at it. If the landlord now all of a sudden tells you that he's going to raise your rent, you can't keep affording it, eventually you're not going to have a place to live. Then what happens? The most simplest thing is shelter could drive you into a phase of realizing that you can't even think straight. You don't want to start a business. You don't want to have a career. You're just trying to have a roof over your head. But because you didn't buy some real estate to protect your livelihood, now your dreams and your goals about becoming this entrepreneur can't even manifest itself because you're just trying to find a couch to sleep on.
Today's guest is Storm Leroy. And let me start by saying this. This episode caught me by surprise. The first thing I actually told my team after the recording ended was that the conversation caught me off guard. And so I came into this recording expecting to talk about how you can build a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio while working a 9-to-5 job. But what I got from Storm was so much more than that. Storm went from working at Verizon to building a $3 million real estate portfolio in 5 years. And so in this episode, he gives away the blueprint on exactly how he did it. But interestingly enough, he also shared that if he was looking to become a millionaire in 2025, he wouldn't just do it through real estate investing. He'd also invest in something else, which funny enough, it's actually exploding at the moment. And so this is a nuanced conversation. This is an unexpected conversation. He's so honest and he's so truthful. Everything that he's feeling and thinking right now, he just puts it all out there. And so I'm not going to say much more. I'm just going to let you listen and come to your own conclusions. You're watching The Callum Johnson Show. Let's get into it. I was on your website this morning and I saw something that you wrote. Here's what you said. You said, I was once working at Verizon, but deep down, I always felt that there was more, much more that life had to offer. So I took my salary, I started investing, and guess what? In 5 years, I left Verizon with a $3 million net worth. I left Verizon with a $3 million net worth. Okay, here's where I want to begin, because we're going to get into how exactly you did that and how the person listening can do the same thing. But I saw this stat that 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And so as someone that's worked a job, that's been employed, that's been in that life, what do you see as the biggest difference between the employed millionaire and the person that's living paycheck to paycheck right now?
Wow, that's a good question. The biggest difference I see, first, I think I want to start from here. It's really no difference. It's a slight variation. The person who goes to work now, we're trained and we're taught that your job is supposed to pay bills, come back to work, get another check, continuously pay bills. We don't pay ourselves. So that's the mindset of the person that's always going to work day to day. And the employed millionaire side of that person, which does exist inside them, they just have to realize that the only difference is you haven't figured out the plan to now employ your money, like send it out to actually change your life. You have to take some of that paycheck you get to do something with it. The last person we pay is ourselves. You know, we get a paycheck and then we get paid and then we pay bills and then we go, okay, what's left over? You have to start looking at yourself as a paycheck. So I think once your mind changes into going, what can I do for me with this money? Because we find a reason to save money to spend on things that really don't change our lives. We would say, you know what, I'm not going to pay a bill this month, I'm going to go on vacation. I'm not going to pay the bill this time. My birthday coming in. I want to get this. Or you know what? I deserve this car. I deserve this chain. I deserve this trip. I deserve this luxury. I think you deserve freedom. I think when you really, no, not think, I know you deserve freedom. And when you start taking that money to empower that money to do these things, it just happens overnight. You really just go, what have I been doing? So literally for me, once I started taking, and I'm gonna give you simple math that you can do. I don't want anybody to think, oh, this is something, it's hard. Okay, let's say $100 a week. $100 a week is 52 weeks in the year. That's $5,200 right there. Then you say, okay, what's some other money that we abuse? What about tax return? So now if you take your taxes and stop balling out, the average tax return for some people is around $5,000, depending if you have children. Let's go with $5,000. By the end of the year, that's $10,200 that you can do something with. You can take that money and now empower yourself to do something with it. So I think there's no difference. The only difference is the belief that you can, if that answered the question.
No, you're good. You're good. You know what? It's, you built your wealth through real estate and investing in real estate. And it was interesting to me as I was doing the research and the prep for this episode, it became clear that like historically throughout American history, so many millionaires, billionaires, wealthy, like generationally wealthy families have been built through real estate and investing in real estate. There was one, I saw this quote from Andrew Carnegie where he said, and he was like in the industrial age, he made like billions of dollars. He said 90% of all millionaires become so through owning real estate. More money has been made in real estate than in all industrial investments combined. The wise young man of today invests his money in real estate. And so here's what I wanted to ask you and get your perspective on. When we look historically, why do you think so many people that are wealthy have become wealthy through real estate?
Good question. And it's kind of simple in a way when you look at it, because there was a need for housing. There was a need for people who were moving to different parts of the world. If you look at when settlers and everything happened in the United States, settlements happened like on the East. But then there was this whole rest of the United States going on out there, you know, where people where it was the Homestead Act. The Homestead Act came into place where they encouraged people who were settling in the East to go out there across the land and find more land. And if you can find land that you can harvest and grow for 5 years, they would give you 100 acres of land the United States would do. So now you have to look at it. These people who were settlers who went out, and I won't get into the indigenous people who land was taken from them, they were killed during this time because they were people out there already. But still, the United States came along and was giving away all this land. So now that's where housing come into play and the development and the owning of land and the people who did own the land at the time. What were they? Who did they look like? What were these people? See, all of it tells a story. And unfortunately, the story really doesn't benefit my people, realistically. So when you hear the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, and things of that nature, you have to look at it like, okay, they built a lot of wealth off of oil when it was that time. Real estate didn't really come into play. It had its time, and it came into play, and people started getting into real estate, but we were the renters of real estate. So yeah, a lot of people built wealth in real estate, a lot of people, but you have to look, everything has its time and its turn. And I'm really here to tell people that real estate has had its time. It really has. And this is going to hurt people, but I only could sit when I talk to people, be very realistic. Real estate will not be that wealth building tool to build everlasting wealth like we thought of before. You know why? Because there's a shortage of it. Something new is coming in. Now, don't get me wrong. You still can make money in real estate. You still can have great cash flow in real estate. Will you be able to buy a house right now like your grandparents did for $80,000? And that house is now worth 1.2 or 1.7, $2 million? No, because those $80,000 houses are gone. So now what? You're going to buy a $1.2 million brownstone? I'm going to stick to a brownstone. I bought my brownstone for $300,000. Now it's worth 1.7. Do you think a kid behind me in my neighborhood who's going to buy my brownstone for 1.7 now is going to be worth $4 million? What's the likelihood of that? So now you have to look at it like this. I encourage everybody out there, buy you some real estate, partner with your family, use group economics, use real estate as cash flow, because you're going to need real estate as a place to live. Rents are getting absorbently high. Buying real estate is high. You hear people talk about it all the time. They just can't afford it. Everybody knows somebody that has 5 or 6 roommates for a reason. This didn't exist before. Now it's the norm because it's high price. So now when you look at a product that's extremely high, there's really the value in it is not gone, but it's trapped. What I mean by trapped is if you have a $2 million property, but you're only getting rent let's say about $4,000 or $5,000 in rent. Okay, what are you going to do? If you try to refinance that property, now you're going to say average $1 million mortgage is $6,000 a month, if I'm not mistaken. So now you're looking at $12,000 if I refinance my $2 million property, but I'm only getting $3,000 or $4,000 in rent. The numbers don't make sense. So now all that equity is trapped in the house. See, before people built wealth because they were able to refinance, get that money, raise the rents, buy more real estate, like keep doing the same thing. But if you sell your property now for $2 million, what you gonna go buy? Another $2 million property? People sell their properties now for $2 million in New York or another city. Guess where they have to move? To the South. So it's there to make money, to build cash flow. But the way we see wealth in real estate isn't just by being an investor. You have to look at, am I going to be a developer? Am I going to buy some land and try to develop a community? I see the wealth being there, but here's the sad part. A lot of people are not built to develop real estate. A lot of people are not meant to do those things. You know why? Because they have a day job. But I want to tell you, buy real estate to protect the roof over your head, because you have to look at it. If the landlord now all of a sudden tells you that he's going to raise your rent, you can't keep affording it, eventually you're not going to have a place to live. Then what happens? You know, like the most simplest thing is shelter could drive you into a phase of realizing that you can't even think straight. You don't want to start a business. You don't want to have a career. You're just trying to have a roof over your head. But because you didn't buy some real estate to protect your livelihood, now your dreams and your goals about becoming this entrepreneur can't even manifest itself because you're just trying to find a couch to sleep on. So protect your dreams by getting you an asset that you can own, even if that means partnering with someone. So,
you know what? Here's where I want to go, because I think it's such an interesting conversation. A couple months back, we had Tiffany Aliche, the Budgetnista, come on the show. Incredible guest, incredible person. One of the things that she mentioned early in the episode, we were talking about like the rising cost of living and how expensive things are in America today. She said that there are households in San Jose in California on the West Coast. They are making $230,000 and can't afford to move out of home. They're having to live with their parents. Yep. That's how expensive things are. It's almost like the new poverty isn't even, you're like a good six-figure earner, and you still can't afford to get on the real estate ladder. And so here's where I want to go, because I actually read this tweet this morning. Someone had basically said, why is our generation so unhappy? And someone else responded, and this tweet that they responded with went viral. They said, we're so unhappy because salaries don't match the cost of living, education doesn't guarantee you a job, and everything is so damn expensive. And so the reason I even bring up those 2 points, it feels like at some point it all has to hit a head, right? Like all of these things, the price is rising, the job insecurity, even like automation, AI, all this stuff, it feels like it has to come to a head. You have a community, you speak with, I don't even know how many people you speak with every year, hundreds. From your perspective, what is like when you kind of look at the macro, what is your biggest concern right now when you see the way things are going?
Okay, quick pause. I want to take you guys behind the scenes for just a second and share a tool that when I tell you this has dramatically improved my productivity, and they're actually sponsoring this episode, and that is Notion. So I've spoken about Notion before in other videos. My team and my business is all run through Notion, and it's been a complete 180 for me. But recently they released Notion AI, and that's been another game changer. It's like having a personal AI assistant built right into your workspace. And so, for example, we're recently planning our clothing launch, our merch launch, and I asked Notion AI for marketing ideas. It analyzed all of my documents that were already in Notion related to the clothing brand and recommended 5 custom marketing ideas specifically tailored to the podcast. And funnily enough, we're actually going to be using some of them in the next few weeks as we launch our merch, so you can tell me how they did. But anyway, If you're someone that wants to be more productive in your work, Notion is your lifeline. So head to notion.com/Callum Johnson. That's all lowercase, notion.com/Callum Johnson. And when you use our link, not only are you helping yourself, you're directly supporting the show. So thank you. And let's get back to the episode.
My biggest concern is my community that I live around, my people that have jobs and backs against the wall. Like, when I say my people, I don't want people to get confused, because when I say my people, I don't want you to narrow it down to a color. Like, struggle has no color. There's tons of us who grew up and knows what like bread and mustard sandwiches were, you know, like that's a struggle. Like, don't get me wrong. We all have a struggle, but I'm worried about my people with jobs, because jobs are going away at an alarming amount. You know, there's surveys where they're looking at by the year 2030, about 3 million jobs could roughly be gone in the next 6 years. And when you look at who that's going to impact, what type of jobs are those? You look at factories, look at cashiers, you look at people who are doing the Ubers. You know, Tesla just dropped its self-driving rideshare program. You look at Google has Waymo, which is another driverless car program. But that's mostly people in our neighborhoods. And when you look at the young generation now who trying to get jobs and thinking the way to go is having a job, what is it going to look like for them? And the reason why it drives me with such a high state of concern, because you had a lot of people who moved into the hood. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, Bed-Stuy. My neighborhood is gentrified. You have a lot of people who moved into our neighborhoods, buying the brownstones, buying everything, which is great. But you have to remember, these neighborhoods once were considered like wastelands, very unsafe. You know what I mean? Like, crime rates was very high. Why were they so high? Because of drugs, lack of jobs, lack of opportunities. Once jobs came in, now you look at the drugs got out of it, they cleaned up the neighborhoods. People moved into my neighborhoods, our neighborhoods, and they brought the value up the properties. The value with brownstones was 300. Now they start going up to 500, 700, $1 million. But the problem was they offered people in my community jobs to continuously pay more rent. They didn't offer the people who got these jobs and made the area a good area to live in the opportunity for home ownership. If you opened up a mall and you opened up Barclays and you open up all of these Trader Joe's, all these opportunities, the Amazons, for people who work in this area, don't just come with jobs. Come with the opportunity to say, well, if you work for 5 years living here, what we're going to do, we have a mortgage program for you to be able to become a homeowner in your neighborhood. Now you're going to be able to buy the home. And that program wasn't there. You know why? Because we were taught to be so happy just to have a job, but it wasn't our fault. But let me stay focused on why the area is so important. Because now when the other people came in and brought the value to our neighborhood, we didn't bring value. We didn't bring value. We paid rent. So another group of people came in, brought our property value up because the jobs were down. But now if you look at Brooklyn North and Brooklyn South, crime rates are starting to go up again. Crime rates are going to go up. So if you take away all the jobs that made the area safe, what are you telling the youth who live in these areas now? What are they going to do when Amazon says we shutting down 50%, 70%? What are they going to do? What are you going to offer them when Uber's no longer having ride share? Because that's most of the jobs. What do you think they're going to go do? They're going to come outside and go, you know what? I got to get money. And who's going to be the first people they go after? The new people that just moved into the neighborhood. And now when the crime rate's going up, these people who came and bought a brownstone for $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, crime is high. They're going to be able to say, you know what? I think it's time for us to move. And when they move, they're going to take the equity with them, because the word's going to get around through the rest of their friends. It's getting bad over here. You know, my wife was attacked. My husband was robbed, this and that. And now when they start moving, you own the house next door. You're fortunate to be able to buy a brownstone. Who are you going to sell it to if all the people moving? You're going to be sitting there with a $2 million brownstone, forced to sell it for maybe $1 million. because the people who brought the value didn't. So I'm worried about my people who have jobs and they're not offering them any type of future when they know the jobs are going to be gone and they're not offering them home ownerships. What's going to happen to those youth in my community?
No, that's powerful. That's powerful. You know what? We're gonna get into your story, and we're also gonna get into how someone can build a real estate portfolio. But before, I just want to stick on this topic for a second, which is, you spoke about equity, you spoke about ownership. I remember being a couple of years ago, being in this talk, and the guy, he's mentioning these different families, the Rockefellers or Michelin, or like historically wealthy families where the money is passed down through generations. And he starts talking about ownership. And as he was speaking, it kind of dawned on me, for so many of us, like, we're not even really aware of the value of ownership, of owning something. And the reason why is because, you know, we grow up and our parents are renting the home that they're in, and the friends they're also renting. Like, everyone's, you even mentioned it earlier, we're in this cycle of like renting. And even today, it's like rent used to be 30% of people's income. Now it's 50%. Now it's 65%. Like, it just keeps going and going. Can you just talk about what is the value of ownership? And I'm not even just talking about for an individual. I'm talking for the course of someone's family. Like, can you just make that real for people? What's the value of ownership?
The value of ownership is so important, because if you don't hand down something that has some type of value, I'm going to keep it small, right? Let's say somebody's great grandmother bought an heirloom that was a $700 heirloom. Now she handed it down to her daughter handed it down to her granddaughter, and now that heirloom, let's say that brooch or diamond, whatever it is, went from $700 back then to being worth $20,000 today. That $20,000 can now buy something. That ownership of that one little thing can now say, you know what, that's a down payment on a house. That can create something. And I'm giving you two on a small scale. There are people in our neighborhoods who have bought houses for $40,000, $50,000, 70s and the 80s. Now they handing them down to their kids and their grandkids, and they're worth $700,000. Or I won't even say Brooklyn. Let's go into Atlanta. Let's go to other places. That $30,000 house is worth $300,000. What is that doing now? That's paying for colleges. That's helping that child or whoever it is see that, oh, grandma own her house? Guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna buy me a house. See, now it sparks that key thing of ownership, but what was taken away from us, and I want y'all to think about this, because when I sit and watch TV and I look at so many things happening, and I always say to myself, what were Black people doing at that time? Like, where were we at? So when I hear the stories, like there's a show I watch called American Pickers. And the guys go around buying all the stuff, and they pick through the barnyards, find the old cars, the old paintings and stuff like that. And I sit there and go, you will very ever rarely see a Black family where the two guys in a van go to pick stuff. When they go find the old car, the Ford T1s and the old paintings and from 1936 and from 1867 and all that stuff. And you know why? Because we were slaves coming out of slavery. There was Jim Crow. We didn't own anything. We were possessions. But it shows me how valuable these things were in these people's barns and how they have them and how now they're going, oh, I'm going to leave it to my grandchild. Oh, I'm going to sell this and I'm going to leave it to this. Oh, my dad died and he owned all of these things. And it's not like we couldn't. It's just we didn't have the opportunity. No matter what nobody says, we didn't have the opportunity. So when you hear the stories about the Rockefellers, I admire and I love those stories. But I want people to think about when they say, well, you had the same chance as your grandfather. No, my grandfather didn't have the same chance. My grandfather down south, very limited education. What he did for a living, he would cut the trees. With my dad, they would take the sap out of the tree to sell it and also to make fuel. But we're talking 1930s. What was going on then? Jim Crow. They wouldn't even let my dad here in the United States, in New York, they had redlining going on in the 70s. Even though the Housing Fair Act was over, and I think it's 1968, they still wasn't loaning money when my dad wanted to buy a house. So that's forever impactful. That impacted me. If my dad would have been able to buy that house when I was a kid, you know the value that would have been for me and my brothers now? If the banks would have been loaning money. But now I bought a house at $300,000. Now one of my properties worth 1.7. But imagine if my dad would have bought it at 40. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's the story of it. Little things, man. God, I'll let you keep cooking.
You know what it's like? I don't know. I remember when I heard that talk, even listening to you now, you understand how like these single decisions that an individual made could change the whole course of their family's trajectory, right? Like you even spoke about it with your dad. If your dad had been able to, if he'd had the ability to purchase a property, that could have changed the whole course of your family's trajectory, all of your lives, descendants going down generations through that one thing. And so I'm grateful that we're having this conversation right now. And you know what? I want to stick on, you mentioned your dad. If I go back to your early context, your early childhood, because I think we learn so much about people, about their mindset, about their motivations from those early years, that early context. If I really wanted to understand Storm Leroy, what stories, what moments would I need to be aware of from your childhood?
Real quick, guys. I'm so excited. We just launched our exclusive YouTube membership community where we will be uploading extra content. I'm talking about exclusive deep dive interviews, bringing back some of your favorite guests, deleted scenes that never made it into the episodes, as well as behind the scenes footage from the show. And just to give you a taste of what's in there, we just released an exclusive interview with one of our most popular guests, Mr. Grateful, where he's breaking down how exactly you can start a business in just 60 minutes using ChatGPT. He actually shares his screen and shows you specific prompts and AI tools that are going to help you start this company. From coming up with the initial idea and the product to then designing a website that can go live and you can start selling product. And that's just one video that's in the community. We'll be bringing more and more. We're going deeper with you guys. We're leaving no more excuses on the table. All of the information you need to be happier and wealthier for less than $10 a month. And so if you're serious about leveling up, go to the description, hit that join button. And when you do, not only are you helping yourself, you're also directly supporting this channel. So thank you so much. And let's get back into the episode.
Wow, he's going there, y'all. He's going there. Literally my dad, watching him work construction as a kid. He was a day laborer, so with that, literally what that looks like is sort of when you see guys outside of the Home Depots and stuff like that, he would go to these job sites and wait to get picked to work a job. So coming from the South, my dad was a very strong guy. So I'd be like, oh yeah, come on, you're gonna work. Even though there was a union, they still wasn't allowing him to be part of a union. So he helped build a hospital in Brooklyn, New York called Woodhull Hospital. He was digging ditches, but he would come home, he would have me take his work boots off when he could catch me, because I would always try to hide. Have me take his work boots off, and I'd be like, dang, taking them boots. And I had other brothers, sisters, but it was me. It was me taking them boots off. So one day, we out there playing Skelly, for those that remember Brooklyn game Skelly. And I noticed them carrying my dad home, bringing him in the house. So they sit him at the kitchen table. I go in to look what's going on. And he's covered from the waist down, like mud, just covered. And he calls me over to take his boots off. So I'm taking his boots off. And he looks down at me, says, do you know why I have you take my boots off? So I says, finally, he's going to tell me why, sort of like an origin story to like a superhero. I'm finally going to get the meaning of this thing that he's been having me do. So I look back up at him and I ask him why. He says, because I don't ever want to see you going through what I'm going through. You know how powerful that was for somebody so young? Like, you would think that your dad who works hard would be showing you the value of what hard work can do for you. He was showing me how destructive hard work was, how it tore his body up, how it didn't rely on him being able to be a guaranteed provider of legacy, only a provider of time for somebody else to build something. It took me a minute, but I got it. And then when I got older and I got a job, I realized that same thing. I started working at Verizon. I got hurt at work, fell off a pole, ended up having to get surgery. And I'm like, hey, this is what my dad was doing. This is not what he wanted me to do. So that's when I went out and said, I'm going to buy my first piece of property. I bought my first piece of property in 1999. Like, watching my dad instill something in me that I know he wanted me to get this message. He would intentionally do things like this. It's just funny when I think about it. He would call me downstairs. We lived in this 2-floor, brownstone, which we were renting. And he would call me down to turn the channel. Call me and turn the channel. So I'm turning, there wasn't no remote controls, y'all. So I'm turning the TV, he'd be like, stop. Watching, and I'm waiting, he go, turn again. Turn, I find somebody, leave it there. So I'm trying to run back outside to play with my brothers or go back upstairs. He'd be like, no, sit down next to me. So I'm sitting down next to him and happened to be the basketball game, the Knicks. And we watching the game, and he'd be like, oh man, that Bernard King, he's something else. That Bernard King, and I'm sitting there going, I don't want to be sitting here. But as I got older, I realized my father was trying to bond with me. He was trying to create a bond that he never knew or never had with his dad, because all he knew was work. Remember, my grandfather used to cut trees and had my father out there at 8, 9, 10 years old carrying logs because they had to eat, they had to survive. So he never had that. He was trying to create that with me through watching TV. And when I got older, I was like, wow, how uncomfortable that must have been for my dad to not know how to have a level of communicating with his son where he could say, sit down with me, I want to spend some time with you. Or turn the TV off, let's have some talk time together, let's father-son time. See, I watched my dad transform into the dad he wished he could have been in the twilight of his life, because he had to work hard and do so many things where he wasn't there. But I get why he wasn't there. So I never look at my father not being there as some kind of, oh, he was never there for me. He was never there. When I hear that, I ask, what was he doing? Because if he was working, he couldn't be there. My dad worked, my mother stayed home, 8 of us. My dad worked and my mother stayed home. I got it. He couldn't be there. So it's my dad.
Yeah. You know what? You mentioned your dad. You mentioned your dad's the work and that, like, the suffering that comes from the work and the fact that it also took him away from his family. And then you also mentioned your mom, your 8 siblings. I'm curious, like, who outside of your dad, who were those kind of influences that, like, molded you when he wasn't there? Like, who was filling that void?
Wow. My older brother, man, he was like, he is. He's a hell of an influence on me, because he showed me what it was like to want to travel and enjoy life. Like when he got his job, him and his friends, and they would be like, they going out, going to enjoy life, going to the nightclubs and getting girlfriends and getting their first cars. And I'm like, wow, that's so cool. And then there was one time I spent a summer with my brother, and he really would just have those talks with me. He would get his money together. He had a savings account. He went and bought his first condo, and he would really just enlighten me on healthy things to do. It wasn't being in the street. It wasn't smoking weed. It wasn't drinking. It wasn't trying to follow a crowd. It was being an influence on people by representation of what you want to see and what you want to have. Being that kind of influence and realizing that somebody's always watching you. You know, and my brother was that kind of guy till to this day. Man, could talk about so many things. He always leaves me with something. And I always remind him like, yo, he's always fascinated with me by the things I say and the things I read. And I'm, bro, this came from you because you made me inquisitive. There's definitely my brother, my great uncle, just, a few other people, but close family.
No, that's awesome to hear. You know what? You spoke about the influence of your dad, also the influence of your older brother. I think there's several like interesting points in our life, especially when we're younger. I think kind of that transition of actually really becoming an adult, of getting your first job and all of those things. And like you're young and you have this vision going into the future of like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to be. This is what I'm going to spend my time doing. I'm curious at like, I don't even know what the age would have been, 18, 19, 20, 21. What were your aspirations? Like, did you even have a conception of what like a successful life would be at that point?
To me, a successful life, which was part of the training that the world gives us, is a job. They really train us to be robots. And that story resonates in a lot of our house homes and our communities. If you literally think back, and not even think back, if you look at somebody else that's successful, you see where they come from. It's most likely it's somebody who owns something. It was ownership. Their dad owned a company. Their dad owned a car lot. Their dad owned this. Their moms owned that. Somebody owned something. But if you look at somebody who was a hard worker, they came from somebody else who was a hard worker. So for me, it was, man, let me just get me a good job. Let me just get me a good job. The freedom aspect of it was the work that my dad did, but he wanted me to understand that hard work wasn't it, but he didn't know how to show me ownership as much as he wanted to. He didn't know how because it didn't allow him, but he did start me off with knowing this shit ain't for me. Hard work ain't for me. And that thing always resonated inside of me working, being at Verizon. The first time I went there, it was more of, I'm not gonna be here long. I was always an entrepreneur. I had a barbershop. I was into tech. I was into all kind of stuff. I was like, man, I'm gonna be here about 2 years. Went there and I'm working, money coming in, and the work was easy. But one thing I did learn by working around other people who work, they hand down their life lessons on you on how you could do something that you wasn't built to do. What do I mean by that? When I went there, I said, well, how long you've been here? The OGs, they go, y'all been here 30 years. I got about 15 left. I'm like, damn, you've been here 30 years? No way, I'm doing 30 years. You got other guys who, I've been here 15 years and I got another 15 to go and I do this and, the money. And I'm thinking after a while, that shit started working on me. I could do this. I could do 30 years. I could do 15 years. And my brain, I started transforming into this person. And then it hit me and I said, you mean to tell me there's nothing better you could do for 30 years besides come to somebody else's job and wait for them to come and snatch your dream away from you by saying you fired? There's nothing else you can do. That's when it literally that mindset of taking my salary because your job is your first business partner. I want to tell that to everybody within the sound of my voice. Your job is your first business partner. It's the first thing that believes in you and invests in you. Once I had that mindset, my job's my first business partner, because you got to think about something. Social media wasn't around when I started working for Verizon in 1995. There wasn't no blueprint to me to go look at somewhere and watch people talk about real estate, talk about credit repair, talk about this, that. No, I had to figure this shit out on my own. But once I got that first piece of property in 99 that my dad wanted me to have, I was so excited. I bought this brownstone. I gutted out this brownstone and I'm in there and I'm like at the ground floor of this property and I'm looking up. There's no floors, there's no electric, there's no nothing. So imagine me in the basement looking all the way up to the roof, 3 floors up, and I'm going, yo, my dad would be so proud of me right now if he saw what I did. He would be so amazed that my son did it. But I also looked up and I said, I never want to do this shit again. This was hard work. doing that renovation, gutting it out, that was work. So now I said, how can I take this real estate thing and now transform this into making money where I don't have to work hard? Remember, there was no social media around. So the next thing I did was I said, you know what, I want to get another piece of real estate, but I became a landlord. Brother, one thing us real estate investors do not talk enough about, we're starting to hear more with social media, is what it's like to be a landlord. That's some of the most tumultuous, hard work to do. Having somebody else tell you when they're going to give you money, you have to go do this, you have to go do that. Like, I couldn't do it. I already had a foreman. I didn't need tenants to be my boss. So that turned me off from buying real estate. But one thing that did happen after I bought the brownstone and time went on, I realized cash flow was king for me at the moment because it was money I didn't have to go get, that cash flow coming in from tenants. So I said, I want to buy more real estate. A friend of mine introduced me to somebody who said, you know what, I own real estate that I don't manage. I said, what do you mean you don't manage it? He said, nah, I don't deal with tenants. I don't collect the rent. I don't do any of that. I said, well, how's this possible? He said, yeah, I have a management company. So that's as far as the conversation went. So I went online, started looking Google, all this stuff. I was like, oh shit, I can really start getting properties. First thing I did with my money that I took from Verizon that I was saving, I took $8,000. I bought a property in Indianapolis, property manager. It was making $600. It was making $800 from Section 8. My mortgage was only $200 and some odd dollars. So let's say I was making cash flow $600 a month. Now the $8,000 was the down payment on the property, which was $40,000. You know, they were able to give loans for that type of property. So now I took $8,000. I'm making $7,200 at the end of the year, and I don't have to manage it. I said, yo, that's insane. I'm making a great return. So now that's when I went to start looking at more out-of-state real estate, more properties that were tenant occupied. Didn't have to find a tenant. There was already Section 8 because Section 8 was paying the rent. And I just went buying more and more and more and more and more, building up my portfolio, partnering with people. And in 5 years, I walked out the door owning over $2 million worth of property. Went on Instagram Live and said, guess what, y'all? I'm leaving my job. You could do the same thing. Start saving up your money. Here's how you do it.
Okay, you know what? We're going to get into that. We're going to get into exactly how someone can go, even if they're still working in a job, how they can start building their real estate portfolio. But before we do, something you said right in the beginning of your answer, which I thought it's like such a relatable thing. Right, which is, and I did exactly the same thing. You go into, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur from when I was 14, 15 years old. You go into a job after university or school or whatever it is, and you're like, you know, I'll be here for a little bit, you know, I'll just see what it's like, you know, get used to it a little bit. And then years start to go by. Then you start building up like a lifestyle. You know, like now you have an apartment, maybe you have a car note, you have you're going on vacation twice a year. Like your whole life is built around this job. And there's a certain comfort that comes with it. Like I saw it living in New York, like, you know, you're going out to dinner with friends on the weekend. You're going out to the bars, the clubs. Your whole life is centered around, you know, I work during the week. Then I have the weekend where I get to enjoy life. Maybe I get my couple of weeks of PTO. There's a whole lifestyle that's built around it. And there's a comfort. There is nothing more addictive, at least that I felt. There's nothing more addictive than that salary, that paycheck hitting your account every 2 weeks. And so I'm curious, when you reflect on your story, what is like in your mind the pinnacle of you just being in that comfort zone of almost falling into that trap that your dad was trying to warn you about of just doing the hard work, of just showing up without that real long-term plan? Like, what comes to mind?
Overtime. Like Verizon, I was getting tons of overtime. I mean, when you're getting overtime and you're making thousands of dollars in a week, that was like, same thing. Taking me trips, get me a car. We can now hang out. I can do this. But guess what? I needed to go back to the well to do the work if I wanted the money to now maintain that lifestyle, though. To me, have a nice apartment, for me to have a nice car, for me to be able to say, yeah, I deserve this. I earned this. Yeah, that's what it was. But when I realized, well, once I got hurt, I wasn't getting that money no more. So remember, I got hurt at work. So now I'm home and I'm like, oh, I ain't getting that disability. I'm not getting that overtime. I'm getting disability money. But yeah, but I got this car note now. I had this lifestyle. That realization of this is the money that you'll be forced to make if you physically can't get up and go to work every single day. How will you survive off of that number? That's the number I want people to look at. Not the number you make when you can physically get up. All it takes is one slip and fall, broken disc, slip disc, shattered knee, anything. Can you live off of that number? Not the one where you young, you moving around and you doing all that OT. Nah, so once I realized that, I said, yo, this ain't gonna work. I gotta get my shit together. I gotta find another way to make money before I have to change before I'm forced to change.
Mm-hmm. You know what? That's so good. And as you were even saying that, and you were talking about, it only takes one, like a broken disc, one slip, one fall. It clicked in my mind as well. Like in today's age, and with the way that things and technology are going, doesn't even need that. The way that AI, the way that automation, all these things are developing, you could be out of the job and not able to work. Nothing's happened to you. It wasn't anything that you did. You didn't get injured. Mm-hmm. Replaced. We had a guest talk about that recently, mass replacement. I feel like you want to say something.
Yes, yes. Yes, I do. One of the key things that worries me, like I said before, is that we do not take tech, automation, robotics seriously as a people, especially as a working group of people. What are you waiting for? You see it right outside your door all the time. We see it. We using these gadgets that's taken over. Like when you walk into, for example, I went into Targets. And I'm in there, normally, the registers are ringing. This is a weekend. People are in there. Registers are ringing. No, it was Home Depot, matter of fact. Registers are ringing, going nuts. But now we go in there, there's a long line. There's a bunch of registers and only two people going, go to that one, go to that one, go to that one. No more registers. Going to the supermarket, same thing. They got this long line. Nope, go to that, register 3. You ringing up or it's automated. I went into, I forgot that store, this department store. It's a Japanese designer store. Yugo or something like it. It'll come to me while I'm talking. Uniqlo. Shock the shit out of me. You go in there. I have my clothes, and the guy waves me up, and he goes, come to this register. I'm like, there's nobody here though. So he has me drop my clothes in the bin, all of them, and it rings it up. I said, what's the likelihood of error? He said, well, there's roughly a 1 or 2% chance of error, but it makes up for that by the salaries that don't have to pay or the coverage. Straight up. I said, ain't that something? So they already planning this. And Uniqlo, same company, I said, I'm a deep diver. I love to go look at numbers. I said, let me look at their numbers before they went, automated like this. When they went automated like that, made another $4 billion the next year. $4 billion. Like, what do you think Amazon's gonna do? If you look now and you Google, Amazon literally has those robots that goes around the floors with these packages, automatically stocking stuff. But the thing is, we act like our job is safe. Oh, my job's never going nowhere. No, your job's gonna be gone too. And the thing is, what are you waiting for? I literally was talking to an Uber driver and I said to him, I said, they have like Waymo, Google has this, and Tesla announced the self-driving car service. I said, what do you plan on doing? Yeah, I've seen it. I'm trying to figure it out. I said, trying to figure it out? Why do you have to wait till your house is on fire before you start realizing you need to have an escape plan? Fire extinguisher, like something. It's inevitable. And when this happens, America knows this is going to happen. And now they're going to there's a program called a UBI. Andrew Yang was running under this. They're going to have to implement a payment system for people that are unemployed. They're going to have to, because there's going to be no job left. When you take away jobs where you're ringing up something on the register and there's pictures, fast food, like what is there lower than some of these jobs? They're going to have to pay them. And now when they pay them to stay home because you don't get any money, they give you this universal basic income. Canada does it. There's other places that's doing it, if I'm not mistaken, other states. This is a way for them to be able to still control you in a way, but there's still a way for them to collect taxes. Now, how does this impact real estate, which is so vital? When you have thousands of people, millions of people without jobs, how are they going to pay rent? How are they going to be able to live? Now, the government comes along and say, you know what? We're going to be paying these people rent through this program because they don't have jobs. We're going to pay their rent. We're going to create a program similar to Section 8, but we need houses. Who has houses out there? We need 200,000 homes so we could place these people and pay their rent for them. Well, don't you know BlackRock and Vanguard and all these companies, they bought over 300,000 homes in the last 5 years. Why are they buying so many homes? They're not buying them to be landlords for people with jobs. They're buying them because they know programs are going to be coming and they're going to be getting guaranteed rent from the government. That's why they're buying up all these homes. This is why they're going to be landlords. This is why you see all of these apartment buildings going up and it says for lease and for rent and they don't say for sale. Remember high rises used to go up. You could buy condos. They're not selling you anything because they want a generation of renters. That's the ultimate plan. You to be a renter, your kids to be renters. See, we just talked about the power of ownership. And growing up where we knew, even though my dad wanted to be an owner, he couldn't, he still was telling me for ownership. But what happens with a kid where all he grows up and knows rent, lease, rent, lease? He doesn't know anything about owning anything. He had 5 or 6 roommates. He doesn't know the first thing about owning anything. That's what the big picture is. A generation of renters.
You know what? It's you talk about he doesn't know anything about ownership. Ownership is interesting because, and I've kind of seen this with owning and running a business. It's actually a mentality. There's a certain way that you move as an owner. There's a certain responsibility to being an owner. And you know what's interesting, because you even mentioned it earlier. It's almost like you either adapt and you move by yourself, or you're forced to adapt. The world makes you adapt. And one of the things that's interesting, so I know in 1999, you bought your first real estate property, the brownstone. When I was going into your story, you had actually had the opportunity to buy a brownstone a few years prior. And I think, and I want you to share this because I think even though sometimes people can see where things are going and they can see that there's an opportunity, something stops them.
Yeah. Something
like holds that there's like a risk, there's a final thing that they don't want to make that step. And so can you just share that story? Yeah,
it's 1995. This older gentleman, he's old and in his twilight years, his late 60s, heading to the 70s. And he wanted to sell me 2 brownstones on Bergen and Washington, right? Bergen and Washington. Those are no Brooklyn. That area now is very expensive. He wanted to sell me 2 of these properties for like about $300,000. And I went to go look at it, and I took 2 of my friends with me. And back then it was like drugs. It was crack. It was everything going on over there. And literally they were like, nah, bro, don't buy over here. You got to be crazy. I said, yo, the rent's going to cover it. I'm going to live in one and I'm going to buy these properties. Nah. And they said, yo, bro, I'm telling you, I don't know what you're thinking about, but don't do it. Don't buy it. And it stopped me from buying those 2 buildings, which today, those buildings each are worth over $4 million. And I said, but it wasn't their fault. See, I had people with me who didn't have the vision to see something that I was trying to force them to see. They didn't have, dad like mine who was talking about ownership. They didn't have, I knew that they were my friends based on the the commonality, I think that's the right word I'm using, but we had something in common. We like to play basketball, baseball, we like to hang out, we like to do this and do that. But they didn't have the same vision of me as being an owner. So when they saw that and they thought about the work, they thought about the crime, they were thinking about my safety. They were like, nah, dude, like, yo, don't do it. They didn't see nothing wrong with it. And being that they were my close friends, I looked at their advice as being, they were looking out for me. So you know what? They got my best interests in mind, and I didn't buy them. But when I bought my first property, I had another friend who was a realtor. He knew real estate. So now when I had this second opportunity, I didn't talk to them. I talked to somebody who had a vision and knew where real estate was going. And they was like, yo, nope, you better buy this because this is gonna happen. The rent's gonna cover that. Now you're gonna be able to do this. Buy that brownstone. And I bought that brownstone. So you got to surround yourself with the right people, what you want to do, not the people who think your friends are going to look at it and protect you on the level of you looking out for your best interest. But man, looking back on that, vital lesson.
Can you talk about a little bit more actually about that environment and surrounding yourself with the right people? And I want to get it from this perspective, because I think it's something that we've all experienced, is that it's very difficult to move away from your friends. I'm not even saying that you have to completely disregard them or exclude them from your life, but there's a lot of people, and I've even been in this situation at times, where like, you're only really friends because you've been friends.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we knew each other growing up. Like, there's no commonalities, there's no shared vision. But like, I think we find it's really difficult to make that adjustment and to get in new circles. And it almost feels like you're being selfish doing that. Yeah. You're disregarding them. Can you talk about that in your journey? Like, how did you even start to make that shift over? Yeah,
you have to, for me, it was realizing that I wanted more than my circle had to offer. It was realizing that I had questions that my circle couldn't answer, and I need to go out in the other circles. When I realized I wanted to invest in out of state, I wanted to invest in real estate. My friends who were into real estate didn't have a clue about out of state. They didn't know anything about it. They were just like, nah, I would never do it. So I wanted to seek knowledge somewhere else from other people. So one of the things you have to realize is that if the circle you have around you do not have the answers to the questions you have, go out and find them. Like the same friends you have now, they will limit your knowledge based on what you guys are talking and what you're doing right now. So if you have a great book, great information, and that information, you can only have a conversation with yourself about it, you need to switch that circle and get yourself around some people who can say, oh, you think that's a good book? Here's another one. Here's another great book. Oh, you have, like, I started traveling out of the country in the 1990, I think it was 98 or 99, I went to China. None of my friends was going to China in the 1990s. I took my little brother with me. My mother was scared to death. But I was like, I don't want to go to Cancun. I don't want to go to spring break there. I was like, yo, come with me to China. Took them out there, started seeing the world, and it opened up my eyes. Like, it was different just going to these other places, because now I had information they wasn't privy to. I started seeing what technology was like in these other countries. Like, yo, we got flip phones. I'm over here looking at smartphones. I'm like, bro, they got train systems where the whole door, like there's a whole different system. The money system, like this card, they were using cards to pay for trains way before we had Metro cards. We still using tokens. And so your circle is so important for you to find people who want, okay, I'm gonna end it on this one. You need to get around the people who you want to be. That's it.
Was that lonely? And here's what I mean by that. There's this, and this is what I saw in my journey, right? Which is even when I was in New York, you have a certain group of friends, you're going out, and you're all of you, your lives are actually kind of similar, right?
Yeah.
You're all working 9 to 5s. You're all, working, doing similar things, similar friendship groups, similar hobbies, all of those things. And then you make some sort of decision in your life.
You're like, I'm going to start a business now. I'm now going to be a real estate investor. I'm going to be looking at out of state property investments on the weekend and assessing if it's a good deal. Your life is now different, right? And so the thing is that, and you even said, it's like, you now need to find this new group. But there's this interim period where that new group isn't there.
Yep. Okay.
The lonely chapter. So I'm curious, from your story, was that a lonely process?
No. And let me tell you why. When you say to yourself, I have to get around these, I have to get away from my friends, I have to get around new people, I have to do that. The key thing that requires this to take place is change. And when I hear people say, I'm gonna stop hanging around my friends because they're not beneficial to me, what I realize is you actually have to start changing. And when you change, your friends are not gonna wanna be around you. They're gonna look and go, oh, you changing, man. You wanna do this podcast and do that stuff? Yo, all right, cool. So now, when they wanna hang out, guess who they not calling no more? Now they not calling you because they know not he over there doing that. Like, you know, when I try to tap back in with my friends and be, yo, I ain't call you because I figured you was looking at some properties or something. Sarcastically, you feel me? And people, I want y'all to think about this. You'll hear people say that. Oh, I ain't hit you because I thought maybe you found another good book to read. Oh, I ain't hit you because I thought maybe you was over here. I thought you was See, now automatically they're finding that divide where they're looking at you like, okay, you might think you're better than me all of a sudden because you want to gain more knowledge, gain more information. And now once you start doing that, you're automatically going to find a group of people doing that thing you want to do because you're seeking. You're seeking. And now you're going to meet someone either through an email or either going to this event. So it's not going to be hard and it's not going to be lonely because you're going to realize they did you a favor. The transition is going to be seamless.
Mm-hmm. You know, I love that. This is such an important conversation. Here's where I want to go next.
Yes.
For the person that's on that journey and they're dead serious about it and they want to build, maybe they're working their 9 to 5 right now, but they've had that vision that, you know, I want to build wealth in my life. Like I want that purpose to what I'm doing right now. I don't just want to be in this endless cycle where I'm paying rent at the end of the month and I have a little bit left over and I spend that, I don't know, on a new jacket or a vacation. Like I want something long-term for myself, something that I can give to my kids, to the next generation. And I want to start, and they see real estate as potentially the way that they could do it. The same way that, you know, in 5 years, you'd amassed a portfolio of over $3 million. Like they want that result. And I want to start right in the beginning, because I think sometimes, you know, even when you hear people are living paycheck to paycheck or they have like a small amount of savings, it's daunting to hear like, oh, he made 3 million in 5. Like that seems like such a far reality when you're in that spot where you're living paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And so I want to start right in the beginning of someone who has the serious intention of doing it and they want to start to build momentum. Can you start with what would you say is step one? Like, I just want to start going in the right direction.
Yeah. Man, I'm gonna have a real talk with y'all, like really, and I don't want you to feel any kind of way. One thing I make a promise to myself when I get on any mic on any platform is just tell people the truth about really, and the truth hurts. But I think we've been coddled long enough and it's gonna sting. But believe you me, with a scar, there's a scab and the scab's gonna heal. And you're gonna learn how to do better. We all gonna learn. Right now, if you have a job and you say, okay, I wanna do what he did, you're not gonna be able to do what I did. Gotta remember, I bought property for $300,000 in the area that they were 300 and now they're worth almost 2 million. I bought real estate in Alabama, Milwaukee, Detroit, Ohio, Georgia, Florida. Like I bought real estate all over. I bought over 50 pieces of real estate. Most of them I've never seen before. You got to think of what the prices were like when I was buying them. Now, all of these places, prices have changed. I bought 15 properties in Birmingham, Alabama, ranging for $40,000. In the same area, I'm selling most of these properties now for well over $120,000, $130,000. So now the average person who has a job, this is what you do. You're going to take your money, you're going to get into real estate, because the main goal in getting into this real estate is to make sure you protect the roof over your head. Are you going to be able to buy a piece of real estate by yourself? It depends on if you're ready to sacrifice. You have to be able to say, you know what? I'm paying $2,000 rent now. How can I cut that $2,000 rent down to $1,000? Okay, maybe that means you getting a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom. That's now, instead of $2,000, it's $2,000 coming out your pocket. Maybe it's a $3,000 with 2 bedrooms, and now you have a roommate, and now you're splitting that. Now you're going to say, you know what? Do I really need a car? Do I need this car? Should I be paying $1,500 car note? Maybe it's a $700 car note. Then you're going to say consciously, I have a tax return coming in. Let's just do simple numbers. Simple numbers I'm going to give you guys. If you're paying $2,000 a month in rent and you have a 2-bedroom and now you rent out one of the bedrooms, you have a roommate, you're saving $1,000. $1,000 end of the year, that's $12,000. Let's say now you have a car. You're paying on this car $7,000 a year to drive this car. Would you be spending $7,000 in Ubers for the year? If you would only be spending $3,000 in Ubers, you're now keeping $4,000. And the reason why that's so important, because I'm that person. I had a Range Rover. I was paying $1,500 a month, which is about $18,000 a year. I only drove that car for 3 years, 8,000 miles, a waste of money. So what do I do now? I don't need a car. Would I be spending $18,000 in Ubers a year? No. So now I'd rather take Ubers. So now once you start looking at that and your tax return, you're going to partner with someone or take your down payment to say, I can live further out. Let me get me a house. Let me put a down payment down. If you're paying $2,000 a month, that's $28,000. That's a down payment. Look into the programs, look into the opportunities. But what I don't want you to do is get lazy and to give up, because we become such a microwave generation. People want instant gratification on what to do. Instant, oh, I can't get it. I got to do work. I don't want to do it. But what you're going to do is take the cash flow that you're making, that you're saving up. Don't just think about real estate. It's not like my era. What I want you to do is start investing in technology. I'm sitting here talking about AI. I'm sitting here telling you how about jobs are going to be gone. Start investing in those companies. If you would literally just have kept your first 2 or 3 iPhones and not bought those other 9 or 10 iPhones that came out and just invested that money in the S&P, you will have several $1 million easily. We always want to get the new thing. Invest in tech. Me personally, Apple, Google, look at Tesla, look at all of these things they're doing, because technology is undefeated. Real estate is not the cornerstone of building wealth anymore.
Here's where I want to go.
Let me just get a nail on that. Being a real estate investor and just having a lot of real estate properties won't do it. If you want to be a developer to develop housing and you have time for that, that could be your path. But just buying a bunch of real estate, it's not going to happen because it's not affordable. Tech, and in different ways to invest your money in tech. And I'm going to also tell you, look into advancing your money into the future of money, into the future of dollar where it's disappearing. Crypto, Bitcoin. Think about the new wave that's coming in for your generation.
Okay, here's where I want to go, because I think this is so good and it's such a real conversation. One of the things, and this is the mistake that I've made in my life sometimes, is there's such a thing as too much choice. And here's what I mean when I say that, is the mindset switch happens. Even you spoke about it. Your job is your first business partner. Like, you have that mindset switch and you now see it as, okay, I'm going to take the income that I'm getting from my job and I'm going to start putting it to work. And then maybe you listen to a show like this, or you listen to something else, a podcast, you read a book, whatever, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't know what it is that you read. But there's so many different options
of how to put that money to work, right? We got crypto, we got the stock market. I'm hearing people now, they're talking about Nvidia stock. I think it's now the most valuable company.
Yeah.
Shot up. If you had invested in Nvidia a year, 2 years ago, it would have been a huge return. There's so many options. And you even mentioned with real estate that I think a lot of the times when you think about real estate, we're thinking about the Brooklyn brownstone or like these huge outliers that have skyrocketed in value.
Right.
But then even in your story, you were mentioning investing in real estate in Birmingham, Alabama, or like Milwaukee, these different areas. So let's say that the person listening has made that decision that, okay, I want real estate to be the first step in my investment.
Right. Okay.
And they're starting to look for those, they're almost looking for those hidden gems. Everyone knows about the Brooklyn brownstone, but I'm looking to find the Birmingham, Alabama housing or the Milwaukee.
Okay.
What is that process of even finding that sort of opportunity?
Okay. What I would recommend if you're a renter and you're renting, you want to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to start buying me some properties in Birmingham, Alabama, or I want to start looking at Ohio and Detroit. I'm fine with that. That's great. You taking your money here. You want to buy some properties. Remember, that's not ownership now. You're buying these properties to start making cash flow. So now people would say tax liens and things of that nature. I'm not a big proponent of buying tax lien properties and properties that need fixing, especially if you don't live there, because now you're relying on somebody else, a contractor, to trust to take that property, which is dilapidated, most likely it needs roof and needs repairs. You're buying a property for $20,000. They telling you it's going to be worth $150,000, but you got to put $80,000 worth of work. You're trusting somebody with $80,000 to do all the work, permits and everything to get your property up to code, and you're not there. So for me, I never went that route. I always wanted to buy properties that had tenants in them. So for me, it's always look for properties that have tenants. Go to roofstock.com. Look there. Those are properties that have great properties. You can find tenant occupied properties that need very minimum work. They're ready to go turnkey. Turnkey means you can buy them, you can find a tenant. But I always recommend if you're buying a property that's turnkey, ready for a tenant, start listing the property or getting feelers out there. So when you close on the property, you have a tenant ready to get in there. Don't just buy it and now you're trying to find a tenant. Now you're paying mortgage 1, 2, 3 months, right? But here's the other issue when you're buying in these areas. These properties, like I mentioned, I bought for $40,000 in Birmingham. Now I'm selling them for $140,000, $180,000. You have to say to yourself, the reason why I'm selling them because the people in that area, their salaries didn't go up. They can't even afford to buy them. So now if I'm going to buy a property for Birmingham, Alabama for $140,000, what kind of rent am I going to get? Do they jobs cover the rent? So now you have to, this is why it's important, if you are buying properties, go with programs. Remember, I'm telling you, programs are going to be the future. Get you a house that has some Section 8, veteran housing, some kind of program. So when the government comes along and all of these thousands, hundreds of thousands of people losing jobs, and then they go, well, you know what? We want people to have programs, apartments available for programs, and we're going to give you the money. That's what you want to be ready for, not for people with jobs. People with jobs will be the least desired tenants in the future, least desired, because you know why? Your job might be gone tomorrow. But I know if it's a government program, that money's going to keep coming in. I don't care how good your job is. Your job is still going to be at risk. And then on top of that, you have to look at it like this. Once you get a piece of property and the government comes into play and starts going around to landlords saying, we want housing for people we're willing to pay top dollar. Let's say the average rent is $1,500. You got a property, you getting $1,500 rent, but it's a 4-unit building. You find out there's a program coming along and they willing to give you $2,700 for that same apartment. How long you gonna keep those tenants in there? When they lease is up, you're gonna go, I could get $1,500 or I could get let's say $2,500. An extra $1,000 you can get. Would you keep that tenant with the job, or would you move over to the program for $2,500? It's just business. No emotions attached. And that's what we're going to be facing. Because when these government programs come out, they're always paying more. Like, I'm literally looking at doing a program now with a multi-unit in another state. And it's a HUD. And HUD is willing to pay me on top of the rent another 30, 40% because I'm doing a multi-units that we're looking at putting together. It's going to be for 62 elderly. I don't like to call them elderly, but senior living, 62 years and older. Also student housing and also disability. They need housing dramatically. So now you got HUD. Go out there and find some properties. Go out there and get these apartments, and we're going to give you rent plus 30% on top. Programs are going to dominate. So everybody who got jobs and you think you're safe and secure, I'm telling you, heed what I'm saying. Find you something, even if you have to get with a best friend, you're in a relationship, you and your girl, you and your wife, buy you something to protect the roof over your head. It's going to look different in the future. Average renters are not going to be making it.
You know, that's so interesting. As you was talking, it started to click on my mind that basically almost your principle or your way of approaching it is you're looking for properties where there's like a built-in demand.
Yeah. Like
there's already, and it's stable as well. So either at the base level, that means there's already a tenant in there. It's not a fixer-upper. It's not a flip. There's already, it's done, and there's someone there already paying rent. Or actually looking more into the future, which is where the opportunity is there some sort of government program that's affiliated or associated with it, because that's your stable demand. Here's my question, because you got to help me out. I'm a complete novice.
Go for it, bro.
Rookie in this game. How does someone say that I go to, I don't know, Milwaukee, and I'm looking around and I'm going into different apartments, housing. How do I figure out if there's some sort of government program,
right,
or what in the future that government, like even when you mention HUD, how do I know that HUD is going to come in and be willing to do something with this building or take a look at this building? Like, where does that information even come from?
See, this first and foremost, you will not be going to Milwaukee. Remember, I bought properties in all these states. I never went to most of them. Never bought them, sold them, never seen them. First thing you're doing, you're buying a piece of property that has a tenant in there. And if you're buying a Section 8 property, that means the building is already Section 8 certified. So you have a tenant in there. And if that tenant moves out, Section 8 going to place another tenant in there. So even if it's a 4-unit building, it's all Section 8. All you want to do is make sure that the Section 8, the numbers is coming in right. You ask for rent roll, Section 8 certification. So once that tenant ever moves out, Section 8 is going to place somebody else in there. But if it's a new property, what you want to do is call the Section 8, call the HUD, and find out exactly how many vouchers y'all have in the area. You can easily Google Section 8, put your county in, and you can call them and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying a property over here, and I want to know if you guys got any vouchers. Yeah, we're looking for some placements to put tenants in there. Okay, I'm going to buy this property. I'm going to close in March of this day. Could you set up an inspector to come out to inspect the property so you can make my property Section 8 certified? And they say, okay, bet, let us know when you call. And now once an inspector comes out, he does the walkthrough, it's Section 8 certified. They're going to place a tenant for you. You're not going to have to do that. You want to have a property management company to pay them 10% to do the work. 10% of the money so you can have 100% of your time. Like when I hear people worry about the dollars falling on the floor, it kills me. I'm like, when people go rob a bank, they don't go back for the money that fell on the floor. They went in there for the bundles of money on the shelf. But we busy talking about 10%. You ran out of there with $1 million because 100,000 scattered on the floor. You willing to risk the 900,000 that you left with because you want to go back? That's not how it works. You let them, your management company, deal with the tenants. You let them deal with the Section 8. Like property management companies deal with every aspect. Section 8, they deal with the certification. They deal with the placement. They deal with the eviction. They deal with going to courts. And all you're doing is buying more properties. But I don't want to knock anybody who wants to do fix and flips, tax deeds or anything like that. My thing is you have to say to yourself, do I have time? Do I trust the people doing the construction? Do I know them? It's in another state. What am I, like, I can buy a property in another state because I know it's a tenant in there and an inspection is going to happen. But if you buying a property in, let's say Milwaukee, and it's vacant and it needs repair, and you went out there and said, dag, but now you got a loan to do this fix up, and somebody's telling you about a contractor who can fix this thing for you. You just got to give him the $80,000 to get it up to snuff, and you back home and hey, what's going on? Where are we at? We're running a little behind. Okay, where are we at now? He stops answering your call. Now you going, what? You had no experience. Like, you hear the great stories about people who done great fix and flips and they made 100,000, they made 150. Key thing you should say is, did they have a job? Did they live in that state? What made it possible for them to do it? And when people hear about big deals, which I love to hear about all the great big deals, when people say, oh, it's a 100-unit building and that, and people got involved. I love to hear that. It's also group economics. Like, we run away from investing as groups with each other. Like, we look at somebody with the same hue as you and go, man, I can't trust them. Do you think Magic Johnson bought the LA Dodgers with his money, or he went and got other people's money? When we see all these deals with real estate being done, it's partnering. We have to stop partnering within our own household, within our own group economics, family economics, like family investing. This is the only way you're going to win at real estate now because it's too expensive. And you have to say, I can't sit on the side and go, well, I can't afford nothing. Buy you something so you guys can now start building up a portfolio to create a cash flow. But say to yourself, we're not going to become multimillionaires just off of rentals, but we can become multimillionaires by investing in technology and the future. I'm not talking 5 years. I'm talking, if you look down the line and say, 10 years from now, I'm 30, let's say you're 35 and you go 10 years down the line, what is Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Tesla, NVIDIA, AMD, what are these companies going to be doing? Buying up all these other companies. Tech is the only place where now you can do, when they buy up all the other companies, when they broke this up with Ma Bell and them, I'm drawing a blank. When you buy a lot of companies, tech are the only ones who can go and buy a lot of companies and not be hit with a license, like a problem with that from the government where they're trying to break them up. So why are you not investing in tech? Is only in its infantile stages. How come you're not saying to yourself, if the dollar's going to be gone, your kids, your grandkids will never touch a paper dollar again? How come you're not investing in digital currency? How come you're not doing that? Because we're waiting to see. You're getting deliveries that's going to be coming to your house. Like Domino, I think now has the car which delivers pizza to your house with nobody driving, hot pizza being baked on the way to your house. Like, what are we thinking about? So real estate is great, but the next frontier is always something else. So remember, it was horses. Horses was the great thing. Then cars came along, got rid of horses. Then automobiles came along, got rid of that. This came along, got rid of that. Real estate was a great money maker. But do we think real estate is going to always be a money maker forever? There's a reason why you look on Instagram, you don't hear many people talking about real estate no more. You couldn't stop clicking through posts and seeing people talking about real estate. Now, it's hard to find it. Because it's not going to be that thing in the future. Get into tech, get into learning about that. Please don't get me wrong, people. Own you some real estate because you need to have some. It's great cash flow. Get ready for the programs. Get ready to make you some money. But don't think you're going to buy $300,000. It's going to be worth $2 million. Invest in the new frontier. What's going on? That's all I'm saying.
Okay, no, I get you. And it's not like, I think also part of what you're saying is it's not so black or white in terms of just do this or just do that. There's a benefit to having like a diversification in your portfolio where you own stocks, you also have real estate in there. But like,
see, real quick,
go for it.
Diversification means you have options, right? We don't have options anymore. If you don't own real estate, you're fucked in the future. If you don't have some type of technology, owning some part of it, I don't know if I could curse.
Yeah, go for it.
You're going to be fucked if you don't own the new era of how wealth is going to be built.
I saw you say this in an Instagram caption. You mentioned that when it came to investing in real estate and becoming like an employed millionaire, you had a mindset switch and you had $8,000 in your bank account. And so I'm curious, for someone, let's say that they're in that position, they have a certain amount of money in their bank account. They've had that mindset switch. They're motivated. They have all of the intention in the world to do the thing. But they're not in the year 1999 when you bought your first piece of real estate. They're in 2024 going into 2025. I'm curious, what would you have done with that? If you're in today's world, with the way that things are, what would you have done with that $8,000?
But I would do $8,000 today. If I'm renting, I would take $8,000 to literally invest it. And I would invest that in tech. Like I would look to say, okay, what companies I'm looking at that are going to be, what companies I'm looking at that are going to be great investments. I would look into things like we see with autonomous driving and electric vehicles. So I'm glad you asked that, because it's weird you asked that, because I've been looking into this. I've been looking into graphite. Quietly, graphite, which is one of the main things used for batteries, these companies have been like 100 times Xing graphite. So I've been looking into that. Another thing, due to AI, there's a lot of energy that's going to be needed to power AI. Microsoft just partnered with an energy company. I want you guys to look into nuclear companies and energy companies, how many of them are just the stocks and just going out of control. But you know what this is? It's quiet because the wealthy people are getting in on the ground floor of the wealth. Then when we find out, it's too late. It's expensive. Same thing with NVIDIA. We could tell the story about, if you would have bought NVIDIA. Yeah, but they were keeping that quiet because they want to get on the ground floor. So I would invest in learning how to trade options. 100% learn how to trade options, learn how to be a day trader, trade some stocks. And from that money, create a discipline with doing that. And you're going to make some good cash flow. Then I would own me something. But then if I'm able to now not have to go to nobody's job, I wouldn't live in the United States. I would literally go live in South America, Belize, Thailand, which I have real estate in Thailand. If you have $1,000 a month and you lived in Thailand, that's $33,000 in their money. I own an apartment in Thailand. We could talk about my international investments. That's what I'm investing in. If you had $1,000 and you're in Costa Rica, I think that's like $5 million in their form of money, cost of living. So you don't have to live here to have a great lifestyle. You can make $3,000, $4,000 and live somewhere else and be living extremely well. But you don't have a choice no more. You have to start thinking about digital, because you're not going to have dollars anymore. We grew up in an era where my dad had a wallet. I grew up with a wallet, but then I got a cell phone. Then my kids went from wallet, cell phone. They didn't have a wallet. They only had a cell phone. Credit card information. What do you think my kids are going to have? Nothing. It's all going to be in some kind of device. Something they're wearing is going to be controlling their money. Are we even thinking about that? If you started thinking about what your kids and your grandkids are going to be doing, you'll be a hell of an investor and you'll be rich. Because you'll be going, I'm not going to use it. I hate when people say, I'm never going to get in a car that doesn't have a driver. It's not for you. I'm never going to walk around without my wallet. It's not for you. I'm never going to do this. Exactly. But guess who's going to start investing what they're going to do? Just imagine if you would have said, you know what, people are going to be searching, and I'm a victim of this. People are going to be using the internet to go search for stuff. You would invest in Google a long time ago. People are going to start ordering packages and not going to the mall. You'd invest in Amazon a long time ago. What do you think our kids are going to be doing? What do you think? When you start looking at them and start... Yeah, bro, sorry.
No, you're good. You know, I think to your point, there's that phrase of like, don't look at the puck, like look at where the puck is going. And so it's interesting because we've had guests on the last few weeks where like the changes that are coming, and I don't want to go super deep with AI, but the changes that are coming with AI and automation and technology, this isn't even a matter of like speaking about 10, 20 years down the line. We're talking 1, 2 years, 3 years. Changes which is like sweep the rate of development of this technology, it's on a completely different level. And so it makes sense what you're saying, which is like, if someone is looking for the result that you got, which is buying a brownstone for 350,000 and then it's worth 2 million, that sort of outlier, that sort of return, it's probably, and there's always anomalies, but it's probably not going to be found in necessarily real estate. It's probably going to be found in these new technologies and how the world is moving. You know what? Let's go back to real estate for a second, because as a cash flowing asset, it is very good in that sense. If say that I'm an employee, I have a job, I'm looking to set myself up, I'm looking to structure my investments, and even thinking about LLCs and how I set myself up to invest in real estate, even just from like a tax perspective. What do you typically advise people? Like, talk people through kind of LLCs and starting a business in that sense.
Yeah, great question. And I always tell people, lead with this. Consult with your tax accountant or attorney to find out if this thing fits you, because everything is different for people.
Yeah.
For me, as an investor, I would buy properties in an LLC as an acquisition to buy that property. But then I would now put that property, after I buy an acquisition, into a holding LLC, whether that be a land trust LLC, whether that be some other form of LLC, to protect my asset. So now that's 2 LLCs. I have another LLC to manage my other products from my other LLCs. Property management LLC. And I think everyone needs to have a property management LLC or a management LLC, period. You have a business. You go to your business every day. You need to have a management LLC for your current business. Even if you say, you know what, I have a store, my store is under LLC and my store is making me money. But guess who's managing that store? You. So why don't you have your management LLC so you can write off things managing that LLC? Managing that store. If you're going in there every day doing repairs and that money is coming out your pocket, why is it not coming out of your management LLC? If you're buying all these goods out of your pocket, why is those goods not coming out of your management LLC so you can write those off? If you got to take all these trips in your car to buy these things for your business, why you aren't writing off depreciation on your vehicle as a management for that property or that store that you're using your time for? Why? Because we're like, oh, I'm supposed to. No, wealthy people don't do that. If you got to mimic what you see, even if you're losing money, I tell people as of today moving forward, you need to have a management LLC. Even if you're in a course or you're in a program, and you'll figure it out later. You know why? Because all those programs, all the courses, all the trips, everything you're doing, and I'm going to give you a book. Tom Willwright, Tax-Free Wealth. I got about 3 books I'm going to give y'all, so get ready. Tom Willwright, Tax-Free Wealth, especially for real estate. If you are a real estate investor, especially me, I invest all over. So when I say I want to go to Florida, it's called a book-in vacation. If I want to go to Florida, okay, I'm going to set up a real estate meeting on Thursday and a real estate meeting on Sunday. I do my real estate meeting on Thursday. I sign in. I meet with the brokers. I meet with the real estate agents. Now my next meeting is on Sunday in Florida. What am I going to be doing all that time while I'm there? Going to be enjoying myself. I'm going to be hanging out until my next meeting on Sunday. This is a valid thing to do. So now you're going to be able to write off 30, 40, 50, 60, depending on what your accountant says you can. But this only works by having a management LLC in your state that you live in. Have a business account, have a credit card, an EIN number, and using that business card for business, not personal. That's what this is about. And I hear so many people who get confused when they hear somebody like me tell you about these things and using, and I scratch my head, and I don't want to make this about anything other than what it actually is. I heard another gentleman say the same thing I said. Literally, watch my videos. Say it. His comments, oh, this is great. This is incredible. I said the same thing. Oh, this is a lie. You're going to go to jail. You're going to do this. What was the difference? He was white. I don't want y'all to think we don't live in a color world. So let's not be, oh, color doesn't, stop. Let's be realistic. It's a real world. And I'm laughing and I comment and go, he said the same thing from my video, but it's valid. I said, I'm not telling you nothing. I even gave you the book to go read the book. Don't even take my word for it. See, the objective for me is not even to be right. It's to make you think. If I can make you go, you know what, I don't believe him. Let me do some research. I got you. Because now you went and found out. I don't need to be telling you. I don't need to be bragging. You be like, yes, Storm was right. No, you're going to go, oh, shit, I can do that. And guess what you're going to read? You're going to do some more stuff. You're going to find out about other tax stuff, about having a home office, how you can write off a percentage of your light, your gas, your heat, your cell phone. You're going to find out about, you're going to be like, holy crap. All because you thought I was lying. See, and the biggest thing that, you know what, my guy, I lost track of what your question was, but I hope I answered it with going into the basis of, the LLCs.
How someone should structure
it.
Right.
So I gave you guys the LLC to acquire your property. Also, if it's real estate, I also recommend having that real estate in another LLC. You can look at that for protection. And also a management LLC, which could be for real estate or business, but you need to separate your money from your business. Don't have your money going into the same LLC as your real estate asset. Have that separate. If somebody sues that LLC, you don't want to jeopardize your cash flow that's coming in on the same LLC with the same bank account. Have a management LLC so you can manage that asset. I'll give you some other books as we keep going, because my brain is cooking with books now.
I love it. You know, and I'm glad you mentioned protection, because I think a lot of the times, and I know this for me when I first entered into business, it's like you don't even really think about the protection part of it, that you can get sued and you want that to be, or something can happen, you want it to be separate from you, the person, and you, the business. Like the protection part of it is actually really important. You know what? Here's where I want to go next, because you mentioned group economics and partnering with other people. And so one of the things that comes to mind is if I'm in that job and let's say even I'm doing what you mentioned earlier, which is I'm sacrificing. I'm taking a certain amount of my paycheck and I'm, instead of it going to the nicest apartment that I could possibly get that's taken up 50% of my salary, I've maybe got something that's a bit more affordable and I'm able to put some money aside. So I'm stacking up money. Am I just waiting, I guess, for the opportunity when I can just put a down payment on something? Or are there more creative ways that I can finance some of these deals? Like, can you talk more of the detail on that? Because sometimes you're going to go in the market and you're going to see an opportunity and the savings number in your account might not necessarily mean that you can instantly capitalize. What are like some creative ways that I can, once I see the opportunity, I can take it? Here's
what I'm going to recommend. And it's going to fall back to the group economics, right? Because the rate of what things cost, you're not going to be able to just jump right in a lot of times. But if I know me and you, let's say me, you, another partner, we all want to get a fourplex together. And we go, let's get this fourplex. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathroom. We'll rent this one together, but we'll rent the other 2 out. So now what we do, we'll structure that. We'll say, let's say my credit is the best. So now I get an LLC for us to acquire this property. We'll create a partnership LLC. And then after that, we'll have an operating agreement that we'll sign. So the acquisition, I'll acquire the property first. But remember, we have an operating agreement and we have a partnership LLC. After I acquired this property together, now what we're going to do is do a warranty deed transfer into our partnership LLC. Now, we're not doing this with a bank. For all people, oh, well, banks, you can't. No, you can't do this. We're talking about private money, hard money lending. There's different ways we can do this. Because people hear you can't transfer properties and you can't do this. No, there's a rule stated, a law that was created in 1982, the McGarren Act, that allows you to transfer a property into a living trust or into a land trust without having any penalty. So I want to give that to y'all so you can focus on what I'm saying and not what's wrong. That's the problem, the disconnect. You're trying to find what's wrong when you should gather the information first, right? So now, once we got that taken care of, what we're going to do is we have that property is now into our property, into our partnership agreement. We own that. But guess what? It's a 4-unit building. So what we doing? We collecting rent on these other 3 floors. But more importantly, all 3 of us was able to buy that one building. So what are we going to do? We're going to collect this rent. We're going to figure out when's the best time for us to get another 3-unit building. The same way we got that. You getting $5,000 for your taxes. I'm getting $5,000. He getting $5,000. That's $15,000. You saving $100. I'm saving $100 a week. He's saving $100,000 a week. $100 a week. That's another $5,200. So together, that's 20. That's $10,200. So that's $36,000 we just saved up for the next year. To do what? To go find another property, whether it be out of state, whether it be here. But as an individual, the likelihood of you doing these things are very slim. It is, realistically. It's the reason why generations are sad now. The average 30-year-old will not be as successful as his dad was because the opportunities are gone. But as a group, we can do it. We just have to sit down and realize that we're stronger together with economics and realize people always say, not always, and I don't always say all people. I have to be careful. People get delicate. Not everybody. Here's the thing. We want what we don't even have now a lot of times. People say, well, if I buy a house, I ain't living with nobody. But they got 4 roommates. Or they living in a house with their family with 6 people. I'm not living with nobody. Or if I get this, if I'm gonna do this, I want a house that got 2 bedrooms in it. It got 2 bathrooms and a balcony. You're living on a ground floor. You're living in a basement now. We have to be able to start sacrificing for the greater. You're in your 20s. It kills me when I hear married couples who are engaged, ready to get married, but they want their dream house right now. 26, 32 years old. They want that dream house that costs $300,000, $400,000. Why don't y'all just get a duplex or a 4-plex, live on that ground floor, rent out the rest for a while. After a year or 2, rent that bottom, go get another one, do that for another. You got 3-4 years to be able to get a couple duplexes together. If you were to get 4 duplexes, that's 4 years out of your life. You got 4 pieces of property bringing in cash flow after 4 years, which would go by like that. Now you got equity and cash flow from 4 duplexes. Now go get your dream home. Problem is, we've been sold the dream. America, buy you a house, white picket fence, get that debt. Go get you a college education. Go get in debt. America has the best marketing plan ever. Best marketing scheme ever. Put us all in a hole, all in a rut. Instead of us, you think of other cultures, of other people who have their entire family living in a house. Nobody moves out until you get a house. They don't care if they hate each other. Nobody leaving here till everybody get a house. But us, I can't wait to move out. Or I can't wait to kick my kid out. He's graduated school. You got to move out. Go get your job. Go live somewhere else. Now he got 3 roommates paying rent on somebody's mortgage when he could have stayed in the house with y'all. And now all of y'all are paying a mortgage, or all of y'all putting your money together, pooling our money together.
You know what? There's people that are listening that even as they're hearing you talk, they're gonna have to like rewind. And the reason why is that you're sharing so much information that we don't typically hear. And so, you know what, you mentioned books earlier on. If I'm someone that's listening right now, and it's almost like it's like a fire hydrant, the way it's like hitting you. Like there's no, you're good. But it's so much. And the reason I even bring it up is because it's like a new way of thinking. Yeah. Even when you're breaking down the duplex and like the multiple LLCs, it's a way of structuring businesses and thinking about how you're doing things that I think, to be honest, we're not taught. And so to someone in that position, and understand you've acquired this knowledge over 20 years of doing this stuff, what have been the books, the resources that if someone's listening, they're starting out, you'd be like, okay, this is what's going to add the most value. This is what's going to have the most impact.
I'm going to tell you, if you don't know, if you haven't done anything with finances before, I'm going to give you one book. Start you off. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, hands down. Start you off with that book. After that, get another book. 10X is greater than 2X. After that, another book, Who Not How. Who Not How will change the game for you completely. Another, The Richest Man in Babylon. Read that book. I think I gave you 4 books already.
You gave 4.
Cook with those 4 books. But here's another thing. When you're reading these books, I prefer if you do audio and you listen to the books. And listen to these books, and you will start, and listen to them at least once a year, like Tax-Free Wealth, Tom Wheelwright. I listen to that every single year. There's something else I always get from it. But listen to these books. You're going to get a wealth of knowledge and information. I recommend you sharing this information with your family, with your children, your husband, your wife. Oh, it's a great audio. Listen to this. Because gaining all this knowledge for yourself means nothing if you were to pass away and the combination to the safe dies with you. You need to be able to share this information. Like, we get so proud when we get stuff and it's like, oh man, I got this information, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna, not share it, or we just hoard it. And for me, that's the worst thing you can do. And a lot of times, because we don't know how people are gonna respond when we talk about it. We don't know if we start talking about this and that and they go, oh, that's cool. But you gotta think about it. There's somebody else out there just like you who, when you give them new information, they go, get out of here. I want that. I want to read it. I want to listen to it. But it's important for you to let your kids see you listening, hear you listening, because now kids will listen to 10% of what you say, but they will mimic 100% of what you do. So now if they see you joining these programs, listening to these books, being active, you, your husband, your wife, y'all are sitting down at the table. They seeing y'all doing this thing financially. They see you creating a budget. They're going to go, something's going on in the house with mom and dad. What they up to? Mom, what y'all up to? Oh, what we doing? We're putting our finances together because we're going to invest in real estate. We're going to create an LLC. We're going to get you an LLC because you're going to work for our LLC. And now we're going to be able to pay you in New York. We're going to be able to pay you $12,000 out of our income towards you. And that's $12,000 less on our taxes. And we're not going to give you all the $12,000 though. We're going to open up a Roth IRA and we're going to put $6,000 in that Roth. And now, because we opened up a Roth for you, when you get older and you turn 55 and you keep paying into that Roth, you're going to have almost $1 million, $1.3 million. And the great part about it, that money can't be taxed because we opened up that account for you when you was a minor. Shit like that. So that's the stuff I talk about and teach in my community. This is what it's about for me, giving y'all the information. But you gotta let go of that thing of saying it's too good to be true. No, it's too good to be true because you haven't tried to do it yet. And people like us, you haven't heard talking like this. So you go, it must not be real.
Just quickly to make it more real. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I cannot tell you how many guests have mentioned that book. Can you explain to someone that hasn't read it, what's that value? What's been the value in your life of reading that book?
The simplicity of storytelling from a parent's point of view and how your parents' story may not be indicative of what you want yours to be. And actually how somebody else outside of your household could actually be like your dad you thought would be. Be an investor, be someone who's out there and daring. But this goes back into play of why having a parent that's talking about ownership and one talking about a job, that book, that's what it talks about. His dad was a hard worker, school teacher, if I'm not mistaken. The other dad was a business owner. And his friend, that was his friend's dad. So that's what, if you only hang around a bunch of other friends and everybody dad's work is only been talking about how to have a job. But he had a friend, his father was a business owner, and that's what changed his life. He got the perspective of a rich dad.
That perspective. I think the knowledge piece of it, the information is so important. And you know what? Here's where I want to end, which is we spent quite a lot of time today talking about the future, right? Talking about where things are going. And I think there's a lot of exciting things that are happening in the future. There's also a lot of things that are concerning. And some of those things that are concerning, people are feeling it right now. But if you had to give just a final message for people that when they look into their future 10, 20 years, 30 years down the line, maybe that same way that your dad, when you were younger, he gave you that message of, it's not just about working hard. Like something that's almost like, it's just a truth that needs to hit people so that they can have a successful future looking forward. What's one thing that you would tell them? 2025, looking forward, what's one thing that they would need to know?
The way that people of my era made money may not be the way that I'm going to make money and get rich. I need to look out of what I see in my device and what I see in the world now and what I heard as a way to get rich, and to realize that if I'm trying to be rich in the future, I can't think about these investments of what I'm hearing about how real estate made me rich. How, I bought a bunch of sneakers and got rich by sneaker collection. I got rich from, no. Have to start thinking about what's the next thing to come? What is the main, this conversation that's the rumbling I'm hearing so much about that's going to be so disruptive? Technology, job loss, and every struggle or something that's going to happen, that's going to impact us, there's wealth being made. How can I be a part of the wealth part and not a part of the struggle part? Millions of people are going to lose their jobs. But how can I avoid being one of them? How can I be the person that got rich? Everything that has happened, millions or some group of people didn't benefit, and some group of people did. Are you going to be on that side of going, I'm going to help try to fight Rage Against Machine and stop it? Or am I going to say, I'm going to invest in this thing, I'm going to be prepared, and I'm going to grow me some wealth off of that? Are you just going to give in? Are you going to literally say to yourself also, am I going to listen to they? And when people say they said, who are they? Those are the people who haven't even tried. That's who they are. They haven't even tried. Set yourself aside, go around people that are fearless, who are providing value, who are providing information. Get yourself into a community, get yourself around a group, seek mentorship. Seek knowledge from somebody else who've been through it, who've been there, who has a direction. Listen, follow them, take what they're saying but get away from the current circle. You are where you're at now because of the information and the people you're surrounding yourself with.
I love it. Storm Leroy, thank you very much, my man.
Appreciate you for having me.
It was a pleasure having you.